So, last night, the President of the United States walked into the cross hall of the White House, which, if you haven't seen it, is very fancy. Big columns, very presidential. And he gave what the White House billed as a major address to the nation. The speech was supposed to calm markets, supposed to reassure America's allies, supposed to signal that the war with Iran was winding down and things were going to be okay. Instead, he told Iran they were going to be sent, and I'm quoting, back to the Stone Ages where they belong. And the market went off the rails. $550 billion in market cap gone in 25 minutes. Today, we're going to cover a lot of ground because a lot happened last night, and a lot of it is stuff that directly impacts your money, your purchasing power, and your future. We're going to talk about what Trump actually said in that speech and why the markets responded like someone lit the building on fire. We're going to talk about an oil clock that is ticking right now, and when it hits zero, all bets are off. We're going to talk about a Ponzi scheme that has been running for 50 years and is starting to come apart at the seams. We're going to pull Warren Buffett's look out below warning from this week, which, by the way, came from a man who has $373 billion in cash. So when he talks, you maybe want to listen. And then we're going to answer the biggest question of the moment in World War III. Who wins, gold or Bitcoin? Now, I want to be real clear up front. I'm not here to root for war. I'm from the school of Ron Paul. I'm not here to be a doomer. Millions of lives are at stake in what's happening right now. This is genuinely serious. But here on Simply Bitcoin Originals, we deal in cold, hard facts. And the facts right now are pointing in a very specific direction. Fiat is deception. Fiat is debt. Fiat is war. And we know where wars really come from, don't we?
Nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it. If they had searched deep enough, if they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You're watching all three live in real time: deception, debt, and war. What is this? This is the horsemen of the apocalypse. And by the end of this show, I'm thinking you're going to understand on a level you maybe haven't before exactly why Bitcoin exists and exactly what it's for. Oh yeah. Send it! Let me set the scene. February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel go to war with Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, which is about 100 miles of water that handles roughly 20% of the entire world's seaborne oil supply, basically closes. Ships stop moving through it. Tanker traffic flatlines. Now we're 1 month in, and for the past 2 days before the speech, there was actually hope in the air. Trump had been saying that the war could end in 2 to 3 weeks. Markets were pricing in peace. There was a 2-day rally. The S&P was up, Bitcoin was holding, oil was dipping on peace expectations. The NASDAQ had its best single day since May, up 795 points in one session. The Dow soared 1,125 points. People were feeling cautiously optimistic. And then, 9 p.m., Trump walks to the podium. And instead of giving the world the "we're winding this down" speech they were hoping for, he gave a speech that included both "we're almost done" and, quote, "we're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Those two things, by the way, are not compatible statements. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's hear the clip.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders death. They're all dead. The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. We are unstoppable as a military force. The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none. It's very important that we keep this conflict in perspective.
Back to the Stone Ages where they belong. That's your president. The man whose speech the entire global market was waiting for. The man who was supposed to say, hey guys, Hormuz is reopening. Oil is coming back down. Everybody take a deep breath. Instead, he went full Old Testament prophet at the podium. The fire and brimstone are raining down. And look, I'm not here to debate Trump's Iran strategy. That's a whole different show. What I can tell you is exactly how the market responded to that line in real time. The numbers. $550 billion in S&P 500 futures market cap erased in 25 minutes. That two-day rally? Gone in 19 minutes, all of it, like it never happened. Bitcoin, which had been holding relatively steady, got pushed back down to 65, 66,000. Asian markets absolutely cratered overnight. Japan down 1.4%. South Korea down 2.6%. Oil, which had briefly dipped on peace hopes. Remember, the market was hoping for peace and then hours later surged back above $112 a barrel. As of this recording, on track for the highest close since June 2022. That's the thing about financial markets. They don't process nuance very well. What the market heard in that speech wasn't, we're almost done. What the market heard was, more bombing. And it priced accordingly. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. The S&P is still down 4.63% year to date. The NASDAQ, the Dow, all of them. And before you think, well, it recovered a bit this morning, Fortune's headline put it perfectly. Markets are pricing in an end to the conflict. They're assuming Trump delivers on that 2 to 3 week timeline. If he doesn't, these prices come right back where they were by morning, or worse. One oil analyst, Jim Wickland, managing director of PPHB, 30-year veteran of the energy markets, told Fortune, and I'm quoting directly, if this goes on for another 2 months, we're in a global recession. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. That's not a perma-bear on Twitter. That's a 30-year oil industry veteran with clients who pump the stuff out of the ground. So let's talk about what's actually happening with the oil, because this is the part that's getting lost in the coverage of Trump's speech. Here's what most people don't understand about the current oil situation, and I want to walk you through this slowly because it matters a lot. When the war started on February 28th, tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz didn't slow down, it didn't taper, it basically stopped. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of the entire world's seaborne oil trade. That's not a small number, that's a fifth of the global supply. To plug that gap, the International Energy Agency, that's 32 countries, the big developed economy bloc, coordinated the largest emergency strategic petroleum reserve release in their 50-year history. 400 million barrels, eventually raised to 426 million as more countries pitched in. And that has been barely keeping the lights on, keeping oil prices from going to the moon, keeping the global economy from seizing up completely. But here's the thing about emergency reserves. They're not infinite. Those reserves are expected to run out in the next couple of weeks. We're talking about mid-April. That's the cliff. That's the moment when this managed oil disruption becomes an unmanaged one. Right now, the global oil deficit from the Hormuz closure is running at about 4.5 to 5 million barrels per day. That's already enormous, but when the emergency reserves are exhausted, that deficit could double to 10, 11, 12 million barrels per day.
The world economy cannot survive a 7 to 11% loss of oil supply. It will not survive. We can debate, is Europe going to go first and collapse? Is Southeast Asia going to go first and collapse? Will America collapse first? But the global economy is a certainty. It will collapse if we keep oil supplies down.
What's the likelihood we go there and we stay there? What's the timeline? Like if we go to 7, 11%, for how long?
Well, we've been there for 6 weeks. And I think if we get to mid-April, like you're already seeing flights. I just woke up this morning, a discount airline out of London Gatwick canceled all flights, can't get fuel. So now you're going to start having tourism fall.
Do you agree with
supply chains?
That's very true. It was announced in the UK that the last shipment of kerosene was just made this week, and there's no further known shipment arriving in the UK, which is pretty crazy. But it also tells you that this is a policy outcome, because nobody seems to care. There's no countermeasures. There's alternative ways. There's things you could do if you wanted to. They don't. Why? Because this feeds into this other agenda that's ongoing and that we mustn't forget. We mustn't take our eyes off that. And that is, I've just explained sort of the background with the European Union. It's actually central planners wanting to centrally plan more and more. And it looks like they're going to use this opportunity to impose digital controls and the types of restrictions of individual freedoms that will be at least as bad as during this COVID psyop or worse. Of course, now under the excuse of, there's no energy. You have to stay at home. You can't use your car.
You think that
No
kind
more
of stuff
travel.
is possibility?
It looks like that's what they want, because there were so many policy decisions actually ahead of this, closure of the Strait of Hormuz that already indicated that actually they want to restrict energy usage.
This is who? This is
European.
You?
This is the European administrators. I wouldn't say leaders because they're not really the decision makers.
Who's
but
debating them? Who's arguing with them and disagreeing with them?
Nobody's arguing with them because it's a dictatorship. When the they can do anything. They can put somebody in prison without legal course. They can sanction people without legal due cause, and that's what's happening.
The House of Saud, and when Saudi Arabia is warning about something, you better listen, described this as, quote, a shock of unprecedented scale with no obvious buffer left to absorb it. No obvious buffer left to absorb it. The world's largest oil producers are telling you we have nothing left in the tank to cushion this. If Hormuz doesn't reopen by mid-April, we're all finding out what comes next. And here's the tell, because I know some of you are going to say, Trump said it'll be over in 2-3 weeks, so it's fine. I want to give you the actual market signal to watch, not Trump's words, not a White House press release, not a Truth Social post. Ship insurance. Hear me out. Before the war, insuring a ship to transit the Strait of Hormuz cost less than 1% of the vessel's value per trip. Today, 7.5% on a $100 million ship. That's $2 to $3 million for one trip through 100 miles of water. Before the war, it was $250,000. That's a 10x increase. You cannot fake ship insurance premiums. Insurance companies don't do geopolitics. They do actual tables and risk assessments. When those premiums drop below 2%, that is your signal that the route is genuinely safer. That's when you can actually believe that things are winding down. Until those premiums come down, every statement from a podium is just sound. And in the meantime, gas just crossed $4 a gallon. First time since Russia invaded Ukraine. Diesel at $5.50. Oil futures posted their largest monthly dollar gain in history in March, up 51%. And oil executives are warning that physical crude is even more expensive than futures suggest. You know what this isn't? Transitory. We all remember transitory, right? Don't worry, inflation is transitory. Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell, every financial headline for 18 months, and then shockingly, it wasn't. Well, here we go again, except this time it's not just supply chain issues or pandemic spending. This time it's oil, the thing that powers everything. Food, transportation, fertilizer, manufacturing, semiconductors, everything is downstream of energy. And energy just got hit with a 51% monthly price increase. That's before the SPR runs out mid-April. The cliff.
How dumb do you think I am? Rubio says Iran war to last weeks, not months, with no U.S. ground troops needed. Okay, well then what the f*** is this? What's the letter to the Marines saying, prepare your family, we're going to war? The U.S. sent troops to the Middle East to be deployed. So these are all like in our face lies. I'm a young guy in America. I got pulled out of second grade during 9/11. So mind you, my entire experience is just full of being lied to. Somehow, no matter who's the president, we're in conflict. Bush, conflict. Obama, conflict. Biden, conflict. Trump, conflict. Spend, spend, spend. Debt, debt, debt. Lie, lie, lie. War, war, war. This isn't a blue thing. This isn't a red thing. This isn't a left thing. This isn't a right thing. This is government's gotten too big. They have a monopoly on printing money. They can finance these things. They can steal our wealth through dilution, through inflation. And so if you want to revolt against this, you gotta just pack your bags and get out. The whole system is ridiculous. The whole system is a fraud. The whole system is pathetic. And we're better off building something else, building something new, saving in something else, saving in something new.
That's it right there. That's the whole thing in a minute 30. Lies, debt, death, war, famine, poverty. And look, I know Jack can be a little polarizing. I get it. He's got a lot of energy. He makes bold statements. And people have opinions about him. Fine. But what he's saying there isn't controversial if you actually understand money. Bitcoin is not a number go up investment play. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It is a monetary system running on math that no president, no central bank, and no speech from the crosshall of the White House, very fancy, can change. Trump can say whatever he wants about Iran. Jerome Powell can debate rate cuts. Warren Buffett can sit on $373 billion in cash. The Bitcoin protocol doesn't care. Block time is 10 minutes. Hard cap is 21 million. That does not change. And in a world where every fiat currency and every major conflict in human history has been debased, every single one, without exception, that mathematical certainty starts to look less like a novelty and more like, well, possibly the most important financial instrument ever created. But I want to go deeper on the structural problem, because the oil shock and the war are symptoms. I want to talk to you about the disease. And for that, I want to bring in Simon Dixon. But before we do, look at our likes.
3-4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
I need to tell you about the tools that can actually help you navigate everything we're talking about. Secure your future today with our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. Ready to truly master Bitcoin, storing it safely, sending it freely, saving for the future, including smart inheritance planning. Most people get stuck in myths, shaky setups, and zero confidence when it matters most. The Bitcoin Way changes that. Their expert team teaches you everything: secure storage, smooth transactions, long-term wealth protection, and passing it on seamlessly. Head to thebitcoinway.com now and secure your future the Bitcoin Way. You can schedule a free 30-minute consultation a day using that link in the show notes. Okay, Simon Dixon has been in the space for a long time, and before we watch the clip, I want to give you the framework. Because once you understand the framework, everything you're seeing in the news today makes perfect sense. The United States currently has approximately $40 trillion in debt. The average interest rate on that debt right now is 3.3%. Write that number down, 3.3%. Here's the brutal math. For the system to stay alive, the U.S. economy has to grow at a rate above 3.3% per year. If growth falls below the average cost of the debt, you can't service the debt. You're not making the VIG. And when you can't make the VIG, you have exactly two options: default or print. They will not default. They never default, because defaulting means admitting the whole thing was a fraud. So they print. They always print. They find some new crisis, a pandemic, a war, a financial emergency that justifies emergency money creation. They flood the system with liquidity, keep the Ponzi rolling, and the average American is left holding the bag. And here's the part that should genuinely make you angry. War is not a bug. War in this system is a feature. War funds the military-industrial complex. War justifies extraordinary money printing. War creates the kind of crisis that gives the government cover to do what they're going to do anyways. And who ends up with the profits? The defense contractors, the energy companies, the financial industrial complex. And who ends up with the debt? You, your kids, and their kids. The average American doesn't get the profits. They get the inflation. They get the debt. They get the bill. Simon Dixon explains this a lot better than I just did. Let's watch it.
The way this actually works is currently the average interest on the US debt right now, approximately 40 trillion, approaching 40 trillion, is 3.3%. In order to keep the Ponzi scheme alive, America has to have a growth rate above 3.3%. If you don't have a growth rate above the average cost on the debt, then you enter into the unwinding of the cycle, which would be a recession and a depression. Every time that happens, they need to find a new way of printing money in order to try and stimulate growth. One of those is fund the military industrial complex, create war. But the problem is with that is it extracts wealth from the average American person because they end up with the debt and the company ends up with all the profits. And so in order to keep the Ponzi alive, you have to extract all the assets from the average person, excuse me, and the economy becomes a mechanism for rolling over. Now, you have to have growth above the average cost of the debt. What's happening right now? In this global reset, where all energy and 50 different supply chains are being renegotiated, the projected growth rate for America is approximately 2% this year and 1.7% next year. At the same time, the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year Treasury is spiking, not as much as the rest of the world, but it's spiking up to dangerous levels, 4.5% and 5%. So now you need to roll over $7 trillion of debt at either 4.5% or 5%. The only solution to that was what Trump tried to do. He tried to regime change the Federal Reserve and enforce low yield bonds on the short term by effectively dumping them on Americans. So the largest foreign lender to the UK, to the US government right now is Cayman Islands, which is the hedge funds. So what he tried to do is he tried to force interest rates down artificially low, by regime changing the Fed. And then they could be dumped on American people and American pensions, and you could subsidize the demonetization
What's going to happen
of this program.
What's going to happen because of this action or attempted action?
Well, effectively, that's all gone wrong. So now we enter into an inflationary cycle because this war was meant to be short. It looks like the IRGC put up a bigger resistance than anyone imagined was possible.
We're going to cover that.
So now you won't get the short-term rates down. The long-term rates are rising. Oil prices are going up, so you've created a supply shock and inflation, so you can't get those rates down. And growth is going to go down at the same time as unemployment. That is an absolute disaster. I do not want to reiterate how bad things are going to get from here. I'm not one to say doomerism. I've always believed they could keep this Ponzi scheme going for quite some time. But the growth rate is going to be significantly below the average interest rate, which means that the only solution here is to print more money than COVID, more money than long-term capital management, more money than the global financial crisis, and experience the same economy of the 1973.
Well, Simon, here's my issue.
The economy becomes a mechanism for rolling over. Sit with that. The economy, the thing you go to work for every single day, the thing you're supposed to be able to save in, build in, plan your retirement in, leave something for your kids in, is a mechanism for rolling over debt. That is its primary function in this system. And the way you keep the Ponzi alive, as Simon laid out, the way you keep the math from collapsing in on itself is by extracting wealth from the average person, continuously, methodically, officially, endlessly. And you know what this looks like in practice? It doesn't look like a government agent knocking on your door and taking your stuff. That would be too obvious. Too honest. Too honest. It actually looks like your grocery receipt. You're going to love this, but real quick, if you need liquidity to afford groceries or whatever reason, you don't have to sell your Bitcoin. So why did you sell your future? Ledn just dropped their lowest rates ever. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. Your Bitcoin is never lent out. Never touched, 8 years, 10 billion in loans, 0 losses. Simply Bitcoin clients get an extra 25 basis points off their first loan. Get liquidity without giving up your stack. Go to ledn.io using that link in the description. The official CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the government's inflation report, tells you that cumulative inflation since 2019 is about 25%. And right now, 2.4% annual inflation. The Fed's practically declaring victory. And then you go to the grocery store. Let me read you some actual numbers. Since 2019, 6 years ago, here is what actually happened to the things you buy every single week. Eggs, up 79%. Ground beef, up 77%. Coffee, up 68%. Car insurance, the coverage you are legally required to carry, you cannot opt out of it, up 55%. Electricity, up 43%. Bacon, up 26%. Bread, up 24%. The government says 25% cumulative inflation since 2019. 5 out of those 7 items are running at 2 to 3 times the official number. The only 2 that tracked anywhere near CPI, bacon and bread, the absolute cheapest, lowest margin items in your cart. The things that actually drain a household budget, the protein, the energy bill, the car insurance, those are the ones the number keeps getting wrong. And here's what I need you to understand. This is not an accident. This is not a measurement error. The CPI was literally retooled in the 1990s to reduce reported inflation. They added what they call substitution adjustments, the idea being if steak gets too expensive, you'll just switch to hamburger. If hamburger gets too expensive, you'll switch to chicken. And if chicken gets too expensive, well, I guess we all eat the bugs. They changed how they weigh housing costs. They smoothed out the price spikes. Every methodology change, all of them documented, all of them published in the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports. All of them happen to result in lower reported inflation numbers. Food overall is up 30% since the end of 2019. Car insurance premiums are up 54% since 2020. Electricity just hit all-time high record prices, but the official line is 2.4% inflation. And the Federal Reserve is debating whether to cut interest rates. Your grocery receipt is the only honest inflation report left in America. And the oil shock you're about to experience at the pump, the $112 oil, the $4 gas, the $5.50 diesel, that's just getting started. That hasn't worked its way through the food system yet. Give it 60 days. Then look at your grocery receipt again. All right, now let's talk about Warren Buffett, because Buffett was on CNBC's Squawk Box this week, and before I play you what he said, let me remind you of a couple things. Warren Buffett is 95 years old. He stepped down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. He has, right now, $373 billion in cash. That's the largest cash reserve Berkshire Hathaway has ever held in their entire history, which goes back to 1965. So when the Oracle of Omaha says something about the dollar or the economy or the Federal Reserve, this is not just some pundit. This is not an influencer. This is a man who put his money, and by money, I mean literally hundreds of billions of dollars, where his mouth is by going to maximum cash in the current environment. Here's what Buffett had to say.
Well, let's talk about that. The market has come down substantially.
Not substantially.
Well, you've got both the Dow and the NASDAQ in correction territory. It's the worst performance on a quarterly basis for stocks in about 4 years. Do things look cheaper to you?
No. 3 times since I've taken over Berkshire, it's gone down more than 50%. I mean, if you look at the markets of, the worst probably was the 2007-8 period, although there was that one Monday when you had 21% in a day. I mean, this is nothing. I mean,
Well, this is nothing to make you get excited and think there's huge valuation
Well,
drops.
if they're 5 or 6% cheaper, that doesn't. We aren't in it to make 5 or 6%. I mean, but.
The world's greatest investor is sitting on $373 billion in cash, warning about the dollar, warning about the banking system, warning about what 2% inflation does to ordinary people over time. And he still hasn't bought Bitcoin. I know, but the world he's describing is exactly the world Bitcoin was built for. All right, the big one, the question I promised you at the top of the show. Gold and Bitcoin, both supposed to be hard money, both supposed to protect you in a crisis, both supposed to hold value when fiat doesn't. So after a month of war, after oil at 112, after markets crashing, after the speech last night, who's winning? Gold crashed. I know you were told gold was the ultimate safe haven. It had a massive run, went all the way above $4,600, $1 trillion in market cap added to gold and all the chaos. Trump stood at the podium and said 2 to 3 weeks, and gold sold off hard. Crashed back below 4,600, over $1 trillion wiped out from its market cap in a day. Here's how gold actually works, and I want you to really hear this because it's fundamental. Gold spikes on fear and uncertainty. The moment markets believe a crisis is ending, even if it's just words, even if it's just a speech, even if nothing has actually changed on the ground, gold craters. Gold is a hedge against fear, not a store of value. Those are two very different things. A store of value holds its purchasing power regardless of what some politician says at the podium. A hedge against fear goes up when people are scared and down when they're not. That's not the same thing. Now, Bitcoin got sold off in the short term, too. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. That's market mechanics. Traders treat Bitcoin like a risk asset in the short term. They're uneducated. When they're scared, they sell things. That includes Bitcoin. That's the reality. But here is the fundamental difference, and this is the thing I need you to take away from today's show. Bitcoin's monetary policy does not change based on what happens at the Strait of Hormuz. Bitcoin's supply does not get inflated when the government needs to print money to fund a war. Bitcoin cannot be seized en masse to fund a military operation. Bitcoin can cross any border at the speed of light. You can store it in your head. You can send it to someone on the side of the planet who has no bank account, no government ID, and no permission slip from any institution on Earth. Every fiat currency in every major war in human history has been debased. I want you to sit with that. Every one. From Rome, clipping coins to fund the legions, to the Weimar Republic printing marks by the wheelbarrow, to the United States monetizing the debt from World War II. They always print because war is expensive and the math always breaks. Gold has been the traditional refuge from that, but you cannot send gold at the speed of light. You cannot divide gold into satoshis and send $10 across the planet for a fraction of a cent. You cannot verify gold's authenticity with math. And you certainly can't store your gold in your brain if a government decides they want it. The U.S. they did this in 1933 with Executive Order 6102. Bitcoin is what you use when the old system, the Eurodollar, the petrodollar, the Japan carry trade, all of which, by the way, are breaking right now simultaneously. When that whole structure starts to fracture, Bitcoin is the exit ramp. The yield on Bitcoin is freedom. And I know that sounds like a stupid bumper sticker, but when you're watching oil at $112, gas at $4, diesel at $5.50, eggs up 79%, a Ponzi scheme government printing to fund a war, while Warren Buffett sits on 370-some billion in cash and is warning about the dollar. When you see all of that, all of it at once, the yield on Bitcoin is freedom, stops being a bumper sticker and starts being the most accurate description of what's happening. Fiat is deception. Fiat is debt. Fiat is war. Bitcoin is the opt-out. Here's a hard truth. World War III is upon us. Bitcoin protects your wealth, but it won't keep you connected when the grid goes down. SAT-123 fixes that. Satellite phones, Starlink kits, Faraday bags. Built for people who take sovereignty seriously. Use code SIMPLY at sat123.com for 15% off. That's sat123.com. Use code SIMPLY. Here's what I want to leave you with. You found Bitcoin. You're here. You know what this is. you understand what fiat money actually does over time. You have an option that most people on this planet don't even know exists yet. The opt-out is real. Self-custody is real. The hard cap is real. And every oil shock, every money printing event, every debased currency, every crashing gold price, every Federal Reserve warning, every Warren Buffett cash pile, all of it makes the Bitcoin case more and more clear, not less. So stay humble, stack sats, self-custody your coins, because the peaceful Bitcoin revolution does not stop for wars. It doesn't stop for speeches from the cross hall. Very fancy. It does not stop for the fake inflation numbers or Ponzi scheme math. Nothing stops this train. Hey, I'm Rustin. This is Simply Bitcoin Originals. If you got value from today's show, please smash that like, subscribe, give us a pamp by sharing the video, because we got to get this information to the people who are watching their grocery receipts go up and wondering why nobody's telling them the truth. And leave me a comment. I want to know what you think. Gold or Bitcoin wins World War III? And don't forget to set those notifications for the best in Bitcoin news delivered to you daily. I hope you all have an incredible weekend. I love you guys. See you next time. Stay free. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.